Hello.
Hello, hello. It's good to see you both. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
I'm excited to chat a little bit about the Farm Fund tonight. I was thinking that we could run through some of the prepared slides that we have first, just talking about the grant, who's eligible, some of the projects that we have open for funding, run through what that funding application cycle looks like, and then answer any and all of your questions toward the end. Amanda is going to be keeping an eye on the chat and making sure that we have those questions sort of noted for the end. You'll probably know and have noticed already that this session is being recorded. So it will be available to you and other folks who weren't able to make it tonight in perpetuity. So you can refer back to this if you have questions about the application, if you do decide to move forward with it. But without further ado, I'd like to talk about this wonderful grant opportunity that we have. So the Monadnock Food Co-op Farm Fund, it's a grant program that's used to support a lot of different projects meant to bolster farms' availability to sell at wholesale, allowing farms to grow their businesses and meet them where they are. It's a unique grant opportunity for our region and across the state. And it's a fantastic partnership between the Conservation District, the Monadnock Food Co-op, and the Monadnock Conservancy. And we're just so grateful to have wonderful partners who care about our local agricultural sector and want to improve the lives and businesses of local farms. So thank you for being here, and thank you to our partners. So I thought we could start off by turning the floor to you and seeing what brings you to this space, talking about who you are and the farm business that you run and what brings you here today. I will turn this over to David. Is it okay if I put you on the spot right away?
No problem. Dave Fellows. I live in Hinsdale, New Hampshire. We're in Cheshire County. Deer Hill Farms is the name of my farm. It's beef cattle operation. We do have other critters as well, but that's our main operation is beef cattle. I'm interested in the opportunity because we're doing a little bit of wholesaling right now, but not enough. We're mainly retail. I'm looking to increase the wholesale part of our farm. And as far as hearing about the grant, it's mainly through, pretty sure it was the newsletter that I got, Cheshire County newsletter. That's where I heard about it.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's fantastic that you're at the stage of deciding what to do next. That's really one of the opportunities in this grant is meeting you where you're at and saying, hey, if you want to boost that production, make it to the co-op or local markets, that you can do that and there's support available for you. Sam, if you're able, would you want to come off mute?
Sure, I can. I don't have a camera, so I apologize, but I can definitely go ahead and elaborate. So I'm with Bonita Farms. We're a startup that really kind of got things really rolling starting last summer. Our main focus is on lavender, and lavender, all the byproducts that come with that, as well as just straight up seasoning, as well as some of the other products that go along with that. We also have other critters, meaning goats. So we use that lavender for goat's milk soap. So a lot of different things that kind of vary with that. As we're continuing to grow, last year we put 1,400 plants in the ground. This next year, we're looking to probably go ahead and do the same, if not maybe a little bit more, and then increase beyond that. Looking at this grant to go ahead and maybe take a look at some opportunities for, greenhouse to go ahead and expand the production as well as expand the number of plants that we have available, as well as plants to sell on the wholesale market, but then also the lavender on the wholesale market too. If you go to the spice aisle, there's very rarely are you going to go ahead and find lavender in the spice aisle. It's almost always sold out. So a few different things like that, but that's the main reason. And then as far as finding out about the grant, again, the same with David. This is the newsletter that goes ahead and comes on in and pops up in. And then I got the other one about a couple of days from now. So I'll be joining that. But then all of that kind of is byproducts of staying in contact with Amanda. We took a look at maybe doing some no-till drill last summer, some other things like that. So, you folks are always out there, and I try to stay tuned because there's a lot of good things that come with hanging out with you guys.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, and we're glad to have you. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing a little bit about where you're at and the visions that you have for the future. It seems like you're both coming from maybe different spaces, the value-added space versus the fresh product space, and it's great that there's opportunities that can meet you where you're at. So we'll jump right in. So the mission of the Food Co-op Farm Fund is to support local farmers in increasing sustainable production for wholesale markets to contribute to the thriving local farm economy. The way that I see this grant being really fantastic is it meets you where you're at. We have a diversity of production here in New Hampshire. That's not the case. I'm from the Midwest, and it's corn and soybeans for thousands of miles. You wouldn't see a lavender farm, and you probably aren't going to see a beef cattle operation. And so it's great that we have so much going on in such a small space, and opportunities like this are able to meet the needs of many different producers in bringing their businesses to where you need to be. And apologies for all the words. I'm mostly going to be talking about what's on these slides. But this year, the Farm Fund is going to award $20,000 to farms in Cheshire County and abutting New Hampshire farms, like we were talking about before, to develop and expand production for wholesale markets. So that includes places like the Co-op, Food Connects, and farmers are able to apply for grants between $500 and $20,000. So a lot of different opportunities in there, and they can support a range of projects, which we'll get to a little bit later. And that includes purchasing equipment, infrastructure, packaging, labeling design needs that would get you to that market space, farmland conservation, technical assistance. This year, we also offered another subset of the Farm Fund program, specifically targeting emergency disaster relief. So we split our total allocation pool of $40,000 in half, and half of that went to emergency relief for farms who experienced weather-related challenges this year due to the frost this spring and the floods this summer. And the other half is for our general pool, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So applicants include farms in Cheshire County and abutting New Hampshire towns who want to boost their production for wholesale. We talked about that a little bit before. And specifically, businesses need to be in operation for a year and have secure access to land on which to farm. If you're renting, the lease has to be in writing and long enough for the farmer, for you to complete the proposed improvement project and see a return on your investment. So I see this as being very similar to a lot of federal programs. If you've worked with USDA before, there are certain stipulations that you have to have a written agreement with the owner of the actual land. But there might be there is a slightly less rigorous process than working with federal programs. You'll still need a signed consent form and approval from the appropriate governing bodies and landowners before applying. So this is the meat of this presentation. We're talking about projects. You all have different ideas of what you want to do, and this grant can really meet you where you're at. So eligible projects include those focused on food safety, planning and infrastructure, things like wash pack facilities, equipment for efficient and sustainable food production and harvesting, food storage infrastructure, equipment for value-added production, dehydrators potentially, packaging and labeling development, including logo designs, and cost sharing for technical assistance, including business financial planning from the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund or other reputable providers. You can also fund critical farm infrastructure and capital improvements for long-term farm viability. This is only for farms who have been established and contributing to our economy for over 10 years. You can also support farmland conservation. This includes succession planning, and attorney fees associated with the permanent protection of farmland. There are projects that are not eligible, so this grant isn't meant to cover farm staff time. It's not meant to cover advertising or research feasibility studies. It's for projects that have a marketable return on investment that will get you to where you're going to. It's meant for projects that will lead to increased production and wholesale sales, and not to cover day-to-day operational costs. Priority rise, there are projects that increase farm profitability, develop or expand production for wholesale markets like the co-op, ones that meet market demand, ones that have a cost benefit analysis that determines that these funds are efficient use, and for projects that have a significant impact on the long-term viability of your farm. So this includes the permanent land protection through conservation and capital improvements for critical farm infrastructure. So next, we're going to be talking about the actual funding a little bit, and I will bounce it over to Amanda to discuss that.
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. So as Matt has shared earlier, we've got about $20,000 available for this funding cycle coming up, and projects can range from $500 to $20,000. Projects have typically, I would say, been on average between $5,000 and $10,000 on average. That's been sort of the sweet spot that most people are putting in requests for, though it has been smaller and larger. It really just depends on making a really good case for your needs and why it's going to help your business. So it says here, program administrators can reserve the right to offer funding to selected projects at less than the request. This doesn't always happen, but every once in a while, we'll come back to the applicant and ask them, you know, would you be able to do this project if we provided you with X amount, because we have this much left in the pool of funding. And we talk through sort of how that might change your project. But overall, we like to try to fund projects in full because we realize that you put a lot of time and effort into crafting a budget that makes sense for the project to be successful. Program participants, something to consider is that there's some record keeping involved if you get selected. So you have to keep receipts, invoices of everything that has happened for your project to be successful. So anything during the contract period, you need to be able to keep that good record keeping. One thing to keep in mind is that this is intended for new projects. So if you are applying for a project, you would want the start date to fit in with the timeline of the project. So you wouldn't want to be starting to having expenses now between now and in March when you're notified if your project is funded. Because even if your project is successful, unless you have a special situation, we're not going to be able to provide reimbursement for any of the expenses that go outside of the contract period. So just to keep in mind the timeline, we want to be having projects that start after the award period this spring and end through the start of the winter in December. So they're one-year projects. All right. This is a reimbursement project grant. So what that means is that basically you have to be able to have the capacity to have your own funds to complete the project. And then after completion, you can fill out the final report and we will refund you for the amount that was in our contract for. We realize that that can be a burden on folks to have that expenses all up front. So if you have good, reasonable justification of why you would like to have some of that funding up front, we are happy to provide you with up to 50% of the funds at the point of when you sign your contract to get started. So you have a little seed money to make sure you can get any of the equipment or supplies that are needed for your project. All right, so I alluded to this timeline a little bit before, but proposals are due on February 1st. We're going to be reviewing proposals. There's a selection committee that meets to review them throughout the month of February, and applicants will be notified of the funding decisions on March 15th. And then once you're notified of the funding decision, if you're a successful applicant, we'll work with you to get the contracts in place and you can get rolling on your project. And we ask for you to be considering projects that will complete in 1 calendar year. So by the end of December of the year of the award. All right, so the application, we get lots of questions about how do you write a compelling application? So at the start, there's just the basic information on your business and who the applicant is. And there's the request for a business plan. I just want to call this out for a minute because this is an optional inclusion, but the selection committee really appreciates seeing your business plan. They do provide additional points on the ranking matrix to grants that have a business plan. So it is to your benefit to include a business plan, and especially if the project that you're proposing ties into your business plan to show that you've been being strategic about your funding requests and it really fits into your overall long-term goals for your business. That really helps the committee better understand what type of business, because one thing that you have to think about for these committee members, the selection committee, you have to kind of assume they've never heard of you, they've never heard of your farm, they don't know anything about you, so all they've got to go on are the words which you put in your application. And if you include your business plan, it really helps beef that up, their understanding of your overall farm business. And if anyone has any questions later on when we're chatting about sort of where you can get support for writing a business plan, if you don't have one, we're excited to share information with you about that. All right, so digging into the project. They're not really long applications. We try to make it farmer friendly. 1,000 to 1,500 words is what we're targeting for your answer for all of these questions combined. So we're not looking for length, we're really just looking for a project that makes sense. So first question is describe your project. What are we looking for here? Honestly, a handful of sentences, looking for about a paragraph summary about what it is, like the who, what, when, where, why of your project within a few sentences to give the reviewers a really clear understanding, like in a nutshell, what are you doing? And then these other questions sort of dig into that summary. So what's the need or opportunity that the project will address? So I think this is going to vary a great deal depending on the type of farm business, but I can use an example. So if you were trying to grow plants, but your propagation house is too small, you could say maybe the opportunity is the fact that you have a demand through the roof for your product and you have sales data that you can share about how you're selling out, right? So that's an opportunity for you to grow your business that you could be sharing about. The need there then, herein, would be the fact that you would need additional propagation space to be able to meet that demand. So I think trying to define what is the opportunity and then what is your need to be able to meet that opportunity. That's the sort of the heart of that question. And then what are your project goals? So say if it was to have more propagation space, using numbers to quantify this is really helpful. So what are your goals? Okay, your goal is to put up a new high tunnel, add heat to it. You know, what are you, but those are steps in the process, aren't so much as goals. It's like your goal would be to expand your production by X based on the square footage of Y that's provided, right? Like you really want to show like sort of what's your overall goal? It's expanded production. And then the next question, the tasks and the timeline, that's when you get into, you know, purchasing, doing your research, selecting, and then purchasing, and really getting into a detailed timeline there about what the steps that you need to take and how are you going to be able to do it in an efficient manner that allows for a successful project to come to its completion in December. So thinking through that is what the reviewers are really excited to see, that you've really thought through that it's achievable in the short time frame. Describe your current wholesale production and or product distribution. Basically, what are your sales for wholesale? Now consider all the wholesale options. What are you currently doing? This is a snapshot of what you're currently doing. Restaurants, wholesale distributors, markets, institutions, if you're selling any of them. Consider using quantifying it here too. What percentage of your sales does it make up? That's a very helpful way for people to get a scope of sort of your business. Is it 10%? Is it 50% of your current production? And then how will this project specifically, the next question, how will this project specifically up your game for wholesale production? Because that's really the goal of the grant. So if you're doing that new propagation house, how is it going to shift your numbers on the wholesale? And the more detailed you can get into here with your numbers to quantify that, the better. All right, next. The capacity of your farm to complete this project. This is going to really depend on who is working at your farm and who you're going to be working with as contractors outside your farm, depending on what the project is. So, but we want to make sure that whatever it is that you're going to be doing, you have the right people with you. You have a team in mind. And sometimes this can be a place where if you have questions, we would be happy to help direct you to service providers that might be able to give you some advice on this as well. So who will you be working will you be willing to work with the co-op and the conservation district to make the public aware? We just want to better understand, like, of these examples listed, which would you be interested in doing? All of the above? Great. Just put that. It doesn't have to be a really extended answer. We don't expect you to be going off on your own necessarily to write your own press release or do your own farm tour. It'd be something that we would do in partnership. So there's not a real heavy expectation for details here. We just want to better understand that, yes, there is a level of enthusiasm to be a partner for education. And then how will you educate other farmers on the benefit of this project? This is up to you. This is really like, how do you see a way of helping to foster peer-to-peer learning in our community? What is your plan for covering ongoing cost after the grant is complete? We basically just want to know that you've thought through what the full cost of the project is here, because a lot of projects, their infrastructure and equipment do require ongoing maintenance and needs. And we just want to better understand here, A, have you thought it through what that's going to look like? B, do you have the capacity to handle that in your working budget for your farm? Will it be covered? And then this other one is about metrics again. How do you know you're going to be successful? Are you going to be tracking your sales data for wholesale production and sales? Is it an energy efficiency project? Are you going to be tracking that data? You know, there's a lot of different things depending on your project, but really what we're looking here is like, you've thought through what you can measure and that you have a target in mind. And so this is going to allow you to be able to track through that. And then are there any broader benefits to the community? Not all projects have broader benefits to the community, but sometimes like we've helped farmers invest in infrastructure space for a cold storage for cooling for their products, like freezer space. And we've had farms be able to answer in this question that they're going to offer through a rental program space for farmers looking for freezer space for their animals. And so that was like, oh, the selection committee loved that, because that was like, okay, that is a broader benefit. It's not only going to help this one farm, but they're going to be able to sort of have a contribution to the larger farm economy. But that's really depends on whether that fits the project or not. And then the last part we're going to go over is the budget. We want you to really think through what is the full project cost. And that can include the grant requests, but also everything. If there are other funders that are putting money in, are you putting your own money in? There's a place there to include match of what you're putting in too as the farm. And then to be able to share if those are secured funds or not, if they're pending, are you still waiting on grant applications from, say, a federal or state source or another private donor organization? Just want to better understand sort of like, is this the rest of the funding secured, or are you going to be waiting on other funds before you can move forward with a project? All right. I think that's good. And then you'll see that there's a template in the application for the budget. What's allowed to be put in here? Everything we've talked about earlier, equipment, contractors, professional services. You can't be charging for staff hours of the farm staff. And no more than 20% of the budget can be for consumables. So say, for example, you want to do some marketing. We've had a farm have a logo creation, create branding materials. Well, we understand that once you create all that, chances are you're going to want to buy some of those materials that you had designed. And we respect that, but we just don't want the grant funds to be covering more than 20% of things that are going to be consumable and used for really day-to-day operations. So you could get sort of like a starter pack of whatever you're doing, but then it really just becomes a day-to-day operations. And these funds are meant to sort of leverage like long-term growth and investment. And then the budget justification narrative, I think we'll end with that, but for this slide, and the fact is like, this is your chance to write as much as you want about how thoughtful your budget is. Some people leave this blank and they just have the numbers in the budget table. I highly recommend you don't do that, and that you actually take the time to include some quotes. Perhaps you've already reached out to some of the manufacturers and vendors for some of the materials you need. I include those. It just shows you've done your homework. It shows that you really understand what it takes for this project to be successful, and that you're going to have the funding you need for that to be successful. So please include as much narrative as you would like here. All right, so this is just sort of a roundup. The budget should be realistic and efficient. Use quotes and estimates like we just talked about. Strong budget justification narrative, really, really helpful for the reviewers. Be thoughtful in your answers about how this project is specifically going to help you with farm profitability, and how it's specifically going to help you expand your production for wholesale markets. Those are the two things that the reviewers always come back to. Is this going to help them be more profitable? And is it going to help them expand their production? Is it meeting market demand? Can you demonstrate that you've got the customer base for this if you just had the additional sort of capacity to do it? And really, I would say one of the things that a lot of successful grantees do is they reach out to the staff at the Conservation District with drafts of their application in advance of the deadline. We are happy to review your proposals and provide you with feedback. And that's kind of unique. A lot of grant programs don't do that. But because we're not the ones part of the selection committee. We're really here to help the farmers create the best application they can. So please do reach out to us. We're happy to talk through any project ideas that you have. All right, open it up for questions.
I have two questions, Amanda. The first one is on the application, let's say, for instance, we were working with one of the other agencies, whether it be USDA or whether it be NCRS or so forth along the lines. At that point, is that included in the application or in this process? So that way that's well aware of whether it may be a benefit or something that we're working on, but not critical or crucial to the application. I guess the question is that need to be upfront labeled and hey, we're working with them on this, whether or not it happens, that this is potentially going to come to fruition?
That's a great question, Sam. I appreciate that. And I guess one of the things, follow-up question would be whether it really would depend kind of whether or not it's related to the work plan of your grant. Like, we love to know that your farm is working with other service providers and that you have a team. And so that's great to highlight, particularly if you can link it to how it's going to help you be successful in executing your project's work plan in this case. I don't know if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. They answered it really what I was just kind of looking for there. The second one is let's say, for instance, the grant is 500 to 20,000, but let's say, for instance, the budget for the propagation house and all of these other things is 2 times that, as an example, and the other 20 is coming from our privately funded sources or ourselves at that point. All of that goes into the application as well as, hey, this is only going to be a portion of it, but here's the other one, and this is what it's taking care of. Would that be also kind of come into play there? Is that how you'd like that labeled?
Yes, absolutely. We really do want to see the total costs because it helps the reviewers understand, like, okay, they get it. They understand that what they're asking for is not enough, that they're going to be putting in their own commitment of funds and resources as well. So please do, there's a column for like the total project costs, and that's where you really want to put in everything that's going into there. And then there's a column for what the grant request is specifically, and a column for other dollars that are going into this. And that can be federal, that could be like through a partnership with NRCS, through a cost share program, or that could be, your private, savings, your farm business. And either way is fine. We're not there to judge sort of how the funding is coming about so much to judge, like, it's been thought through the full project costs, and that you have the capacity beyond what the grant is providing to follow through with it.
Awesome. Thanks.
We know farm projects are expensive, and we know that this grant is probably just going to be a cost share, a portion of whatever's needed.
Thank you.
I think you answered all my questions in the presentation. I assume you guys will send out the link or something for the recorded meeting, because there is some stuff I'd like to cover again, but.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So this will go on to the Farm Fund page. So you can find the application, all materials, and this recording on that Farm Fund page. So it'll be up probably midday tomorrow at CheshireConservation.org/farm-fund. And in there, you can actually view some previously successful projects as well. We have those on that page just to get a sense if you're looking to refine your project and see what others have done in the area. I would take a look at that page and get some ideas.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you. Amanda, is there anything else that you felt we should cover today?
No, I think this has been a great sort of overview, and I just encourage you to reach out to Matt and I. We really are happy to talk through your project ideas, and sometimes like talk through some additional funding sources too, because like we talked about, projects can be expensive, and we want to make sure that you understand like the full realm of what the funding options could be. So definitely reach out, where we'd love to be able to sort of work with you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, so much. Have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
Thank
You
you.
bet, you as well. Take care. Thank you so much.